Take some questions right now, or when I'm done, I'll be happy to sign these books that we have here. Does anybody have any questions?
Sure.
Hi,
Dave.
Hi.
How you doing? Michael Vass with MV Consulting and Examiner.com. Just have one or two questions if you'll indulge me. Let me ask you. Well, first of all, let me just start off simply. Since the 2008 election, the media has been drastically reducing the coverage of any anti-war protests and activists like yourself and others. I'm wondering, first of all, do you have any comment on how you feel about that? What do you believe is happening in that regard?
I not only have a comment, I have a whole chapter in my book about that.
Fair enough.
What I see happening is when George Bush was president, I thought that the media was right-centered. Or not right-centered, but right-oriented. And now it appears that since Obama is president, the media is left-oriented. But what the media really is just, and I'm talking about corporate media, and everybody here, I hope, is an exception to that rule. And I find, of course, local media more fair and balanced, even Fox News, more fair and balanced than national media. So what I think the media really is, of course, is only owned by 5 or 6 international cartels, and it's more oriented towards supporting the robber class or the status quo. So when, of course, the anti-war movement has still kept on going since Obama's been president, of course it's been, for the first time since I started to run against Nancy Pelosi a couple weeks ago, I was on Democracy Now! So for like the first time in 2 or 3 years, and I was on for about 2.5 minutes, and then they complained that the media is not covering the anti-war movement. And so anyway, but you will see the Tea Parties being covered. And the Tea Parties are serving a purpose for the robber class. They're putting up this, the people really think it's true, but of course it's being exploited by the Fox Newses, the Republican Party, to get the Republicans back in power. And so for 8 years, Keith Olbermann you saw him on MSNBC be a huge critic of the establishment, of the regime. But we have a new regime doing basically the same thing, and they're silent. And so instead of criticizing what our government is doing, they're criticizing what Fox News is doing. So I think it's just, I call it, even our government, I call it like being, my son Casey was really into wrestling, you know, Worldwide Wrestling Federation, whatever it was called. And then, even when he was like 21, 22, 23, and he was killed when he was 24, and I said, Casey, please tell me you know this is fake. I'll let you watch it as long as you know. Oh, Mom, I know, but it's just like a soap opera for men. And so like I'd watch it with him one time, and Bret the Hitman Hart was a good guy. And I'd watch it a couple months later, and he was a bad guy. And what happened, Mom? You know, he'd give me the whole story about how something happened and whatever. And then but I see that's what it is now. It's like this 4 to 8 years, the Republicans are the bad guys. The next 4 to 8 years, the Democrats will be the bad guys, and I think they play these roles willingly.
Well, let me ask you a slightly different question, going in a slightly different direction. Obviously, we all know that you've been involved in the protests of our continued actions in Afghanistan in 2009 and the drone attacks that have continued to go on under President Obama. And I want to ask you, since, well, pretty much for the entire time that President Obama has been elected, we've been hearing from top Democrats, including not President Obama, but Speaker Nancy Pelosi, Harry Reid, former President Carter and Clinton, that individuals who disagree with the policies of President Obama and the Obama administration are racist.
Right.
So, two parts to the question. The first one being, are you a racist? And it's a fair question.
What is a racist?
It's a fair question based on what they've asked.
Right.
This is what they allege. And the other question is, how do you respond to such a theory on individuals based on the politics of today?
First of all, I would like to consider myself not a racist. But again, even though I grew up poor, I grew up privileged. You know, I grew up in a white town, and I have more opportunity. I had more opportunity than other people. But I would love to consider that I am not a racist. And of course, when Bush was president, I was called something else. I was called a traitor. I was called anti-American. I was called a lot of things that I can't even say here because there's a little kid present. And I still am called those things. But I think it's too, they couldn't when Bush was president, and they can't now. They can't have a debate on the issues because they would lose. So what they have to do is call names, demonize, undermine, ignore. You know, they have a really good program of doing that. You know, if they're not dividing and conquering, and we know that some of you look like you were involved in the Vietnam anti-war era with COINTELPRO. You know, they have a really good way of doing this to people. And so they give us the appearance that we have free speech, but who's listening? With their media, they're very good at saying who gets to have a platform. And so right now, who gets to have a platform? Tiger, and who I call Little Tiger. You know, the thing that he can't keep in his pants. And so, or John and Kate, or Jesse and what's her name, Sandra. So yeah, it's a really while giving us the appearance of having freedom of speech, if nobody's listening, do you hear? Does that make sense?